The test is going to come if we are challenged openly, more than we have already been, by societies which do not entertain this, of which the most important by a long chalk is China. I think it's quite clear that as far as the Chinese leadership under Xi Jinping is concerned, their view of the green world crisis model is that it is principally a useful weapon which can be used to encourage us to self-harm. And I say that having spent some time looking into the way in which the Chinese have tried to weaponize green beliefs. And as I mentioned a little bit earlier in one of my earlier answers, we do have colleagues who've looked with some care at the way in which the Ministry of State Security, and particularly the United Front Work Department, which you may know was described by Xi Jinping as a magic weapon of the communist state, which is responsible for subversion and subversive activities in our societies, in the free societies. It has clearly identified and sought to use these sorts of beliefs as a way of causing us to disempower ourselves. And my goodness, if that's even only partially true, perhaps it just needs a little push, a little bit of help from them. But we are now looking, a whole series of articles are coming out as we are having this interview about developments within the British Armed Forces, of all places. Just recently I read an article saying that climate change education was to become compulsory within the Royal Navy. No, I'm sorry, that's not what I want naval officers to do. I want them to learn how to fight their ships and defend this country. I don't want them to learn about intersectionality or theories of climate change being the science is settled and how correct Greta Thunberg's view of the world is. Absolutely not. These things have no place. And if they're there, all they do is to serve to cause us to self-harm. Chinese are paying no attention to this, and you know that by simply looking at the numbers on the growth of the Chinese economy, the fact that it runs on a coal-fired grid. Look at the International Energy Agency figures, which are the most authoritative for coal burning, and you can see that coal is king. Last year, the most recent report, coal use on this planet reached its highest ever level, more than 8 billion tons. The expectation is that for 2023, when those figures come in, it will break that record. The amount of coal that is used to generate electricity has passed all records. And the place where this is happening most, the two places actually, are India and China. There's a contest between the two, as you know. And I'm not one of those who sees the Chinese as 10 foot tall. I think they have absolutely profound problems. I think they have problems for the legitimacy of the regime. I think they have massive demographic problems, which are partly self-harmed, self-inflicted as a consequence of the one-child policy. They now have this terrible problem of the generation of the dry branches, the young men who have no women. They have terrible, terrible age profile differences. They have awful consequences, which are totally predictable, from command economy control of how they went about infrastructure construction during the years of Chow Enlai, so that we now have ghost cities and we have railway lines that go and motorways that go to the wrong places, and all the things that happen when you try to command an economy. And the hybrid model which they tried to build clearly hasn't worked. And that actually isn't good news for us, it's very bad news, because my judgment, and I'm no sinologist, but I talk to people who are, and I read a great deal about this, is that I think that it makes Xi Jinping more dangerous, because I think it means that he will become more obsessed with protecting his reputation and his position by pursuing military objectives such as the attempt to attack Taiwan, which will be resisted, and we will then find ourselves with the thing which we didn't resist when it happened, which was the Chinese population of these reefs that weren't anything until they built them up, the Spratlys and so on in the South China Sea, and the so-called Nine-Dash Line, which they now claim completely outside any justification of international maritime law to be Chinese sovereign territorial waters. None of these things are true, but he will press forward with that in order to defend his own positions.